The elusive Matvei Michkov next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the free agents on the team. Should Brian McClellan ultimately try to bring any of them back, or should he just cut ties with him and try to bring in some new players? We'll talk about that in the show. And then we'll talk about how the Washington Capitals made a qualifying offer to Martin Fehervary. Will he take him up on the offer? We'll talk about that as well. But just to get it going here, we talk about the elusive Matvei Michkov. This kind of emanates from the 32 Thoughts podcast with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, as they were talking about different draft picks in this year's draft. And one of the players that they spoke about was Matvei Michkov. I've spoke about him on this show as well as an intriguing player, one of the best Russian players to come out in quite some time. So there is a lot of intrigue surrounding him. But part of the interesting part about him is that it's hard to get an interview with him. So a lot of different teams want to speak with him and kind of see what he's all about. But he's not always necessarily willing to talk. Some people believe that he is not necessarily impressed with some of the teams that are in the top, top 10, that maybe he wants to seek a team that's a bit lower, or even potentially the Capitals, who are at number 8. That's some of the rumors that are swirling out there. And Jeff Merrick, who is one of the co-hosts of the 32 Thoughts podcast, said that he could see Matvei Michkov going to the Capitals. Wouldn't that be something? And I know that his word is not the above all end all, but he is a hockey insider and he has covered the NHL for quite some time. So it is a bit intriguing that he picked Matvei Michkov to land with the Capitals. And part of his rationale, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, was the connection, because this team, Ted Leonsis, is fond of having other Russian players on the team. There's been quite a few of them throughout the years. There's a couple on the team right now, as a matter of fact. So not to mention, prospects and, players down in Hershey and ECHL, that kind of thing, that maybe it would be a good fit. And do you think that there is the possibility that Matvei Michkov would like the opportunity to play with the grade 8? It is possible. This is the crazy season, and it's time to speculate and kind of make predictions on what could be. So just talking about that, Michkov is without a doubt one of the most talented prospects available on the top 10. And he is by far, like I said, since Ovechkin and Malkin, there has not been another player to come out of Russia like Michkov. He has a deadly accurate shot, a high hockey IQ, and an unparalleled playmaking ability. His KHL production is also higher than Ovi's was in his draft year. Just think about that. He, at the same point in Ovi's career, is actually better than Ovechkin was. Could you imagine if for some crazy reason it happened that Michkov landed with the Capitals? That would be crazy, crazy good. And I'm excited to even think about it. I know the draft is not too far away, and just the possibility of what could be is really exciting. Because let's face it, even if it isn't Michkov, the Caps are going to get someone great, but the possibility of it being someone that great just kind of gets me excited as a Caps fan. And there are several who believe Michkov is a future elite star in the NHL, and I do believe it. Just looking at his highlight footage, which is hard to find, but I've seen some from the KHL, which releases small snippets. However, getting to know the prospect has been a tough task, like I said here. And the rumored character issues and a lengthy KHL contract that doesn't expire until 2026. And one of the things that I spoke about on this podcast as well is I would be willing to wait. To get a player like Michkov. And I know what you're thinking. We don't want to draft a player that's not going to be good for years. If you can get a player of Mishkov's caliber, I'm going to go ahead and wait. And what is one of the things that we learned about the Ivan Miroshnichenko deal? He terminated his contract with the KHL. So it's not like these contracts with the KHL are ironclad. I don't know the particulars of Mishkov's contract, but if there's the possibility he can get out of it, that would be great. But even if the Capitals have to wait until the end, they would be getting a dynamic player, the likes that this team hasn't seen in quite some time. Some believe his draft stock could fall, and for some, there's speculation brewing that Mishkov may want, per Elliot Friedman said on 32 Thoughts, that numerous teams have been trying to get in contact with Mishkov to get to know him before making their draft day decisions. However, meeting with the Russian has been nearly impossible. And what they're saying is that if you want to get him in an interview, you have to do it right after a practice or right after a game. He's not one of these guys that is just going to, Zoom meeting with you or he's going to talk to you on the phone. It's just not the way he is. Some people point to character issues. That potentially could be. Maybe he's just kind of not a real personable guy. I guess that's not the greatest thing in the world if you're going into an NHL team, but I mean, we're not hiring people for their personality. We're trying to hire players that will perform at the highest level in the NHL, and in this case, the Capitals. So for me, I'm willing to look past any character flaws and, a long-term contract in the KHL, long-term, and somewhat. I mean, it's not that lengthy of a deal. And like I said, what we learned with Ivan Miroshnichenko is that you can get out of those contracts. So I would not hold that against him. And like I said, it would be one heck of a player to get. Teams want to get to know who they're dealing with. What I'm hearing is that in Russia, the teams that could get there to meet him, it wasn't easy to get to talk to him. You would have to try to talk to him, set up appointments. He just wasn't interested, Freeman said. Like someone said to me, the only way you could really get a hold of him is to physically go to a game or talk to him before or after a practice, but only for a couple of minutes. This piece in the Hockey News. So again, maybe he's just not an overly social person. Maybe maybe he's not seeking the limelight. I think as an American, sometimes you look at it and you think that, when you reach a certain level that you just want to bask in the limelight and just, talk about how great you are. I don't really think, just from what I've read and seen that he's really that kind of player. He's just a really good hockey player. And he maybe doesn't have the personality that fits your typical American hockey player. That's okay. You don't have to have that. So I wouldn't hold that against him. I do understand the reservation of a lot of teams out there. They want to get to know what kind of player he is, what to expect from him. And it is kind of atypical to have a player that's not willing to communicate. I get that. That makes it a little bit uncomfortable. But again, I'm not willing to hold that against him. I'm going to go ahead and let his hockey speak for him. And what we've seen and what we've heard and what we've read is quite impressive. Michkov also didn't attend the 2023 NHL Combine, leading to more uncertainty as teams were not only unable to conduct interviews, but didn't have any test results to read into. He will be in attendance for the 2023 NHL Draft in Nashville, though, according to agent Sergei Fedotov. So it is an interesting thing with Matvei Michkov and ultimately what kind of player he is. Maybe other teams' reluctance will work into the Capitals' favor. And the one things I will say about Ross Mahoney and his crew is they have the ability to weed through all this nonsense. If you even take a look again about Ivan Miroshnichenko from last year, he got knocked way down in the draft and was made available to the Caps because of his health issues. As it turns out, the Caps looked into his medicals and they turned out okay. And he is poised to be with the Hershey Bears next year and potentially even the Capitals at some point. So maybe Ross Mahoney and his company can also take a look at Matvei Michkov. They do have an inside track sometimes with Russian players. And maybe they'll say, hey, everything's okay. This guy just doesn't like to talk a lot. Give him a break, and he could land in the Capitals' lap. That would be an exciting proposition to think about. That is for sure. Per Friedman, the uncertainty and difficult of meeting with Michkov has led teams and several others to wonder if is international and if the winger already has his sights set on a specific club. Jeff Merrick had thrown out the Capitals as a possible fit for Michkov earlier in the episode, which I spoke about. So, again, I know that people hold the 32 Thoughts podcast. They hold Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick in high regard, as do I. They are, kind of the premier insiders, but I would like to think that it's going to happen. And it's kind of an exciting thing that Jeff Merrick already made that kind of connection there. It'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition or not. But if the Caps could get someone like that, that he would be, again, a dynamic player. There's a number of teams hearing he's coming in that want the opportunity to meet him, and some of these teams haven't gotten a commitment yet. So what everybody's kind of wondering here is, does Michkov have a preference? Friedman explained. Is there a team or teams he wants to go to, and he's kind of maneuvering it so that happens? I think that's still a bit premature. There are teams that want to talk to him and haven't been given any confirmation that they're going to be able to talk to him. The intrigue around him continues, and it does. So, like I say, will he land in the Capitals' lap? Some people are speculating that he's going to go to Anaheim, which is kind of a team that's not that great. Maybe he doesn't want to go to a team that he knows isn't going to play that well. Plus, Michkov told Match.tv back in May that he is not focusing on which team he would be going to on draft day, though he did say Washington would be a fun place to land. Let's rewind the tape there. He did say that Washington would be a fun place to land. I'm going to just stop and let that simmer in and soak in a little bit. That is pretty exciting that he did come out and say it. So Jeff Merrick said it. And then in an interview on Match.tv, he said it would be a fun place to play. Why? Because he could play with the likes of his fellow countrymen. He could play with Alex Ovechkin and potentially Evgeny Kuznetsov, Ivan Miroshnichenko at some point. So it is an exciting thing to think about. And maybe there is a possibility that he could be coming to this team, and that would be groundbreaking. I would be, beyond excited. Especially with Alex Ovechkin still at the helm and Ivan Miroshnichenko signing an entry-level deal. So excitement abounds with this draft. I can't wait for it to get going here and to find out who the Capitals select at number 8. Regardless of who it is, the one thing that I do know for sure is that it's going to be one heck of a player, and as Caps fans, you should be very excited. All right, coming up here, we will talk about the Caps, and what I'm hearing tonight as I record this on Sunday evening is that the Caps made Martin Fehervary a qualifying offer. I'll discuss it more coming up next. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part fits right the first time, or you'll get your money back. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know if the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure and subscribe or follow to Locked On Capitals wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. I have a lot of great guests lined up for you guys this summer. This week, I will have Locked On Prospects on the show as we talk about some of the top prospects in the Capitals organization. And then I will also join Locked On Rangers as we talk about Peter Laviolette's new home. So make sure and subscribe to Locked On Capitals. All right, in this next segment here, we are going to talk about how they made a qualifying offer to Martin Fehervary. As we know, who is a restricted free agent, but one of the young up and comers in the Capitals organization on the blue line. He's no stranger to the team. He's been here for some time, but still fits the mold of younger and faster, led the team in hits, an exciting, dynamic blue liner. And I think that the Capitals would be wise to try to get him under contract, kind of like what they did with Alexi if he was also a restricted free agent. Let's get it done with Martin Fehervary's game. I love his game and what he brings to this team. And as Caps fans, I think you like it as well. The Caps defenseman Martin Fehervary, a restricted free agent this offseason, has received a qualifying offer from the team. Slovak media outlet reported Friday with negotiations on a contract extension ongoing. I read this piece in Washington Hockey Now. So exciting. One of the players that we've heard about quite some time. When are they going to get the deal done? It looks like they made the qualifying offer. Will Martin Fehervary and his agent take it? That's the next step. I think I will stay in Washington, Fehervary said, according to general translation here. I already got a qualifying offer, and we started talking about a new contract. We'll see how it goes. Fehervary, 23, is expected to be a key piece of the Caps blue line moving into the future alongside Rasmus Sandin. Yes, this blue line is coming together so well. Rasmus Sandin, a huge piece added at the trade deadline this past season. We took the first round draft pick from Boston, sent it up there. We got Rasmus Sandin. And what we saw in a small sample size is exciting. So now you have Fehervary and Rasmus Sandin, two really great blue liners. I am excited about next season already. I don't know about you guys here. After making his NHL debut in 2019, Fehervary has blossomed into a fixture of the Capitals defense. He has he has the second most block shots, 245 of anybody over the past two seasons, in addition to leading the team with 468 hits over the same time span. So that's quite a bit. 245 most block shots, and in addition, having 468 hits. That is quite an impressive stat. That is why we need to lock up Martin Fehervary. Besides missing some time due to an injury in December of the season, Fehervary still has a decent year with the Caps, primarily focused on the defensive side of the puck. Fehervary scored 6 goals and 10 assists in 67 games for the Caps this season. He repeated his physical campaign from last year. Fehervary is likely to factor into the penalty kill during the 23-24 season after already averaging 20 minutes a night with the Caps this past year. For a player that does not accrue very many penalty minutes himself, Fehervary is turning himself into a stable defensive player for the Washington Capitals. So a stable defensive defenseman for the Capitals, an exciting player to have on this team. Again, the blue line is taking shape. It is exciting. That piece was there in the Pro Hockey Rumor. So it does look like a deal is going to get done sooner or later. It just kind of depends on when that will materialize, right? It's up to Fehervary and his agent to accept it or not. But from what was read and said in that translation there, they made me a qualifying offer. I want to be in Washington. So unless it's an extremely lowball offer, it does appear that Fehervary will be the next player to get a new deal done. And that is an exciting thing for me because there was a lot of uncertainty when we were going up to the trade deadline. There was a lot of the blue line wasn't under contract at the moment. During the trade deadline, only John Carlson was the only player under contract on the blue line, except for Fehervary and Alexiev, who were restricted free agents. So a lot has changed in a fairly small span of time. That a lot of the players are under contract. Jensen and TVR got deals, so things are really kind of starting to take shape. It is going to be interesting. I know that on paper, it seems like we know the way this is all going to play out going into next season, but there is always the possibility that some of these players, even though they're under contract, could get traded to pick up a bigger piece, right? So just because players are under contract does not necessarily mean, unless there's a no movement clause, that they can still potentially get traded. Is it likely? Potentially, I guess it depends on what the offer Brian McClellan receives, but I think for right now, you're kind of seeing it take place, and then I think that you can go ahead and take a look, at Alexiev and where he's going to fit in. Is he going to be that depth piece on the blue line? A lot of questions will be answered as we go through the summer and as we have the camps in the fall and that kind of thing. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about free agents on the Capitals. Are any of them worth bringing back? We'll discuss it more straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So there are some free agents on this team, and which players should come back? Should Brian McClellan even attempt to bring any of them back, considering the performance that they got last season? It's a bit of an interesting question. So let's just take a look at a couple of them here. Connor Sherry, most people believe he played his last game with the Capitals, but should they hold on to him? I mean, all things considered, he played pretty solid. I know that everyone's like, Dan, this goes against the script. We want to get younger. We want to get faster. Connor Sherry, he's a free agent. Just let him go. During the 2020-21 offseason, Sherry surprisingly was unable to find a guaranteed contract. It wasn't until December 2020 that the Caps were one of the only teams to give Sherry another shot at the NHL. Sherry rewarded them in kind and was able to sign a 2-year, $3 million contract extension with Washington before his first season with the team even finished. For the first 2 years, Sherry has become one of the better depth scorers in the NHL, scoring 43 points during the 21-22 campaign and following that up with 37 points this season, seemingly destined for a third line and the most competitive teams. Sherry could become a sneaky buy low candidate this summer. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on Sherry. Every time I've seen him play, for one, he does not get injured a lot. Number two, he does not complain under Laviolette. He didn't complain if whatever line you put him on. He just is like, put me in, coach. I'll do my job. I'm a soldier. I'll get it done. And a lot of the times he did. He saw a bit of a dip in production this last season, but ultimately a pretty solid player. Throughout his career, Sherry has always been a plus forward when it comes to puck possession, and it always shown flashes of being a 20-goal scorer. He is in a good position to secure a multi-year deal this offseason, but his playing time over the next few years will likely finish below 15 minutes a game. The downward trajectory. I know what the right answer is that they should probably move on from him in favor of someone down in Hershey. But the way I look at Sherry is that he's always done a solid job, a soldier for the Capitals, never complained, rarely got injured, but he's getting older. His production has dipped a bit. I'm going to go ahead and say, even though I like the guy, I'd like to have him around, they should probably move on. I think they have better options down in Hershey. So that is the tough position. Connor Brown is another one that kind of bugs me because last season when they signed Connor Brown to fill the role of Tom Wilson, I'm going to put fill the role in quotes there, a placeholder, if you will. We never really got a good look at him because he was injured. I want to say it was either the third or fourth game of the season. So unfortunate for Connor Brown. Should they give him another look? Acquired last summer from the Ottawa Senators for a second-round pick in the 2024 NHL draft, Brown was set to factor into Washington's top 6 forward group. Unfortunately, due to an ACL injury early in the season, Brown was only able to play 4 games. In the past, both with the Maple Leafs and Senators, Brown has shown the ability to score 20 goals a season, doing so in the 16-17 and 2021 seasons. However, he has been wholly unable to play a complete season since his time with the Maple Leafs. Benefiting tremendously from playing on the same line as Connor McDavid during his time in the OHL for the Erie Otters, Brown has not been the difference maker that he was expected to be. Fortunately for the Caps, who are, when healthy, one of the better. So again, it's unfortunate for Connor Brown. I don't know where he fits in. He has a bit of a snarl to his game, penalty kill, power play potential. I just don't know where he's going to fit in on this team. I think that, like I said, he was signed to be a stopgap, a placeholder while Tom Wilson got better. where would he fit in now? That is the big question there. Every time I hear a player, different players, should we keep him? Should we trade him? And people like, we should keep him. The things that I always wonder are, okay, I like him as a person. He's a pretty good hockey player. Where is he going to fit into the lineup? That is always the big question that you have to ask, is where are they going to fit? I like Connor Brown. I like Connor Sherry. Where are you going to put him? Remember, we want to get Connor McMichael in there. We want to get, Hendrix LaPierre in there. We want Protus and Malenstein. There's only so many chairs available in the lineup. And, everyone's sitting down, and at the end, there's going to be a couple players without seats going, hey, what about us? Where do we fit? And just based on cap space and all that kind of thing, okay, so I'm just going to look at it. Connor Sherry, thank you for your contributions to the Capitals. Have a nice day. Good luck wherever you land. Connor Brown, oh man, I'm so sorry. I wish it would have worked out better. You only played 4 games for us, but there's just not room. Have a great day. Good luck with your career. That is my assessment on those 2 players. A bit of ice running through my veins. I get it, but I am all about this Caps team winning games, being competitive in the near future, not years from now, not like the Nationals. I hate to bring up the Nationals, but it's going to be a while before that team is any good. I do not want the Capitals to be going through what the Nationals are going through right now. I just don't. So let's not make crazy decisions like that. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Talk Nats podcast. And are you a fan of other DC sports? Well, Locked On has got you covered. We got Locked On Nationals, Commanders, and Wizards. As it turns out, there was some pretty big Wizards news. You'll probably want to listen to the most recent episode of Locked On Wizards. And also, thank you to the everydayers of the show. If you're an everydayer, hit me up on Twitter at DanCaps218 or at Locked On Caps and say, hey, Dan, I am an everydayer of Locked On Capitals. I'll give you a shout out on Friday's show. And I want to say thank you to the everydayers. You are the reason why I do this show 5 days a week. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.